What's good, everybody? Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be figuring out how to make something exclusively in Bitwig, which is a typical Neuro Bass using FM4 and some built-in Bitwig effects. This is a great kind of like starter point to using in a sampler or to do some pitch bending with. Unfortunately, I don't have a MIDI keyboard, so it's a little bit more difficult for me to actually do the pitching and make it sound cool as opposed to having phase plant pitch wheel or whatever. But I definitely wanted to make a point that you can still get some really cool sounds out of just using Bitwig's built-in effects. Today we're basically going to be focusing on FM4 and then some EQs as filters, but everything within this, like I said before, is just Bitwig effects. So with that out of the way, if this is your first time checking out the channel, then I invite you to drop a like and subscription, and I'm always open to comments and all that other stuff, and you can check out all my content on alckemy.com if you like this stuff. With that out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about FM4. Now FM4 is kind of basic by nature. It does have a matrix grid, which I do think is pretty cool, but the fact that it's kind of difficult or kind of like unintuitive of how to change different waveforms and stuff means that you kind of have to put a lot of work into it in order to get something cool. So I'm not going to waste the time with going through each of these divisions or slots or whatever and say, we'll turn this at this amount. You can just pause the video and kind of look at the numbers there. What I am going to talk about is what I'm actually modulating, which isn't a whole lot, but it is going to help make the sound a lot more cool. So there's a randomizer on the main mod of this one. Because everything is feeding into the first oscillator, we basically can get the most movement out of this. So if I play this, let me turn all of these other things off. You can hear that whenever the mod comes up, we start to get in a little bit more high end, and that's kind of the biggest movement or whatever that we're going through. Unfortunately, you can't automate or modulate anything on the matrix table, and I'm really hoping that they change that in a future update, because that can introduce some really interesting movement patterns that we can, utilize later. Now, there is some detuning right here, as opposed to having a single octave or cycle or whatever. I'm just detuning this ever so slightly, and then oscillator 2 is at a 3:1 ratio, a 3:1 ratio, and then a 2:1 ratio. And there's a little bit of mod over here. On this side, I have the first oscillator, second, and fourth turn all the way up, and there's just ever so slightly, just a little bit of percentage here that's introducing a little bit of noise, and you can copy the settings there. Now, one cool thing that I am doing that you might notice is that there's an LFO that is messing with the pan. And if you've seen me talk about the saturator thing while putting it into mono of creating some cool detuning, then you might notice that there's some interesting movement that you can kind of utilize from there. There is a envelope that is a pitch envelope that's kind of just making this kind of, which you can hear. And if we click on this, you'll notice that I've also done a little bit of detuning with two voices using this. And if you've never done that before, you just go to the little layer thing over here and you go to the pitch and then kind of tune or detune it rather to like 30 cents at the most. Well, you can do it however much you like. That's just pretty much what I did. After that, we pretty much go into our main processing. Here you can kind of just use this particular sound, or any FM sound rather, any resound, and get it like similar results using this processing chain. It is a little bit excessive, but part of that is because I'm using some third-party plugins to kind of compare, which we'll talk about at the end of the video, but the stuff that I'm going to be turning on, like I said before, will be first party. So the first one that we have is actually just a band boost that is kind of sweeping some of those low mids around like 150 to 200 hertz. And again, if you see something moving, just assume it's a randomizer. So there's no rhyme or reason to it unless if I specifically state otherwise. Other than that, it will save me a lot of time from explaining that. And if you don't know how to add a modulator, you just go here to a plus thing, find the randomizer, turn it to a curve, and then click the little arrow and kind of drag that along the way. So that's pretty much it for the EQ5. That's the only thing that it's really doing. And then on the EQ Plus, we're pretty much doing the same thing with the band boost, but we're also automating a notch. Now with this one in particular, I am randomizing the resonance of the notch, and that's why you're going to see it open and close. That was pretty loud, sorry. But that's pretty much what's happening. The next thing that we've got is a randomized notch filter again, and that's just going to kind of sweep some of these areas to kind of move around and again create more movement. And then we've got a vocoder that is kind of stagnant, just kind of, again, I always say this in all my videos, but this is the default one. It's just the sweet spot for me. I found that works the best for what I'm wanting it to do, and I just kind of leave it at that. So So the next thing that we have is actually, of course, obviously more filters, but this is my multi-band effects chain. I've talked about it in several videos now. It's just a high pass filter on the low end, and then also a mono tool. On the mid, we have a band boost. Oh, we have a couple of other things on this. We have a band pass. I'm pretty sure that this is a notch. And then we have a phaser and chorus on this that is kind of just moving around. This is an LFO, so it's kind of just sweeping back and forth. This is stagnant, but again, I kind of just, anytime I throw on a filter, like the default setting is just an automated kind of randomly moving thing, and then I'll actually go back and take this off if I need to. You guys don't have to do that. It just works for me really well, but that's pretty much what this is. It's just a really fast way to get something moving without having to go in and do like drawing automation and stuff, and I abuse the heck out of it, and I encourage you guys to do the same. So on the high end, we have a little bit of reverb. That's just automating the mix. You can copy the settings there, and then finally we have a low pass filter. You'll notice right here at the bottom that there's some mix that's happening with that. That's part of the main default preset, but sometimes like you might be cutting and it might still sound really good. This isn't always necessary, long story short. So kind of just keep that in mind. So yeah, we just have more filtering after that. We have another notch filter and then we have a low pass at the end. And kind of all together between all of this, by doing an excessive amount and possibly unnecessary amount of filter movement, we pretty much end up getting these nice cutting sounds in between the mix. The rest of this after is just pretty much corrective means. So we have an OTT that's just at 50%. Then we have our 2-band split where my low end is in mono and my high end isn't really touched. I'm not really sure, what is this effects layer? Oh, so this effect layer is kind of emulating in some way or another. Actually, that's not the correct word, but I would say that it's trying to, as best as I possibly know how, to replicate a glue compressor, which basically when you turn soft clipping on and you turn the gain up or the makeup gain up, it will limit it, but it will start to add basically uneven harmonics. And so basically I just added some regular saturation distortion and then used a compressor to kind of make it sound even. Which, as you can hear, makes it nice and fat. Sorry, let me go ahead and make sure that you guys can see those settings that I've done. So that's everything there. And then these are my compression settings. Again, I try not to like go too far into this actual settings because they're not that important. But yeah, if you've done everything right, then that's pretty much what this sounds like. And in comparison, what I'm going to do is pull up some third-party plugins and show you the difference. So instead of the EQ5 and the EQ Plus, we're going to turn on an EQ3, which is doing the exact same thing, maybe just a little bit more, and then a slice EQ, which is just a boost and a notch. The resonance actually isn't being automated on this, at least not nearly as much as the other one. And then instead of a multi-band effects 3, we're going to use a multi-pass, where it's a little bit easier to see what I'm doing on here, but stereo and mono, high pass, band and notch, and then low pass. I'm not automating the mix on this one, and then that's pretty much it other than our glue compressor. So you can listen to the one that was from before, and then after we have this one. Now, I will say that the movement on the others that I have set up is a little bit faster, and so that's why you have a little bit more morphing and stuff, but just kind of mess with the rates of your modulators and it should be pretty easy. But that's pretty much it for this video. You can literally take any respace or whatever and kind of distort the heck out of it, take a bunch of filters and kind of just process it to death, and then try to saturate it at the end and see what you end up getting. But other than that, thanks again guys for watching this content. Hopefully this was informative to you. Come find me if you have any questions, and I'll see you in the next video.